The black ships came from the void like a dark tide washing over the stars. 200 vessels of the Kethmori hegemony moved through space with the slow confidence of predators who had never known defeat. Each ship was a monument to alien engineering, their obsidian hulls drinking in starlight and reflecting nothing back. The largest among them stretched nearly 3 kilometers from bow to stern, bristling with weapons that could crack planets. Admiral Vexthul stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominion's Edge, watching the blue-green world grow larger on the main display. Earth. Such a small planet orbiting such an ordinary star. The initial scans had been almost disappointing. This human civilization was barely capable of traveling between planets in their own system. Their weapons were crude kinetic projectiles and simple fusion devices. Their largest warships were tiny metal constructs that would barely qualify as escort vessels by hegemony standards. "Admiral," said his tactical officer, a tall, thin alien with pale blue skin and large black eyes. "Long-range scans confirm 17 orbital stations and approximately 400 defensive platforms. Their combined firepower would not trouble a single squadron of our destroyers." Vexthul nodded slowly. It was always the same. Every species they encountered followed the same pattern. First came the bravado, the defiant messages, the promises to fight to the last breath. Then came the calculations, the cold mathematics of warfare that showed just how hopeless resistance truly was. Finally came the surrender, usually within days, sometimes hours. The hegemony had perfected this approach over 3 centuries of expansion. Why waste resources destroying cities and killing millions when a simple demonstration of overwhelming force would achieve the same result? It was efficient. It was civilized. Most importantly, it preserved the conquered populations as productive citizens of the empire. "Communications," Vexthul said, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had accepted the surrender of dozens of worlds. "Open a channel to the planet's surface, all frequencies." The communication officer, a member of the reptilian Saurok species, hissed softly as he worked his controls. "Channel open, Admiral." Vexthul stepped forward, knowing that his image was now being broadcast to every screen, every radio, every communication device on the planet below. It was a ritual he had performed many times before, and the words came easily. "People of Earth, I am Admiral Vexthul of the Kethmori hegemony. Your world now lies within the boundaries of our empire. We do not come as destroyers, but as unifiers. We offer you a choice that countless civilizations before you have faced." He gestured to the tactical display, which showed the positions of all 200 hegemony ships surrounding the planet. "Our fleet contains enough firepower to reduce your world to molten rock within hours. Your defenses, while admirable for their primitive construction, cannot stand against us for more than minutes. This is not a threat. It is a simple statement of fact." The bridge was silent except for the quiet hum of ship systems. Every alien officer present had seen this moment dozens of times. Some had been on the receiving end of it themselves, back when their own worlds had joined the hegemony. "However," Vexthul continued, "we do not wish to rule over ashes and graves. Surrender now, and your civilization will be preserved. Your people will become citizens of the greatest empire the galaxy has ever known. You will have access to our technology, our knowledge, our protection. Your children will walk among the stars as equals." He paused, letting the weight of the offer sink in. This was the moment when most species began to crack. The smart ones would already be running calculations, trying to find some way to resist. The wise ones would realize there was none. You have 72 hours to make your decision. After that time, if you have not surrendered, we will demonstrate the consequences of defiance. We will select one of your major cities and remove it from existence. Then we will ask again. We hope it will not come to that. The transmission ended. Now came the waiting. In Vexthul's experience, Most worlds surrendered within the first day. The truly stubborn ones might hold out for 2 days, but none had ever lasted the full 72 hours. "Fleet disposition?" he asked. "Standard intimidation formation," replied his tactical officer. "Heavy battleships positioned directly above their major population centers. Destroyers patrolling the orbital approaches. Fighters conducting visible reconnaissance runs. The humans cannot look up at their sky without seeing our presence." Vexthul walked to the massive viewing window that dominated one wall of the bridge. Below, Earth turned slowly in space, its blue oceans and white clouds making it appear deceptively peaceful. Somewhere down there, human leaders were having desperate meetings. Their military commanders were running hopeless battle simulations. Their scientists were frantically searching for some weakness in hegemony technology. They would find none. The hegemony's technological advantage was measured in centuries, not years. Their ships were protected by energy shields that could deflect any kinetic weapon. Their armor was forged from metals that did not exist naturally in this galaxy. Their weapons could strike targets with perfect accuracy across distances that human sensors could barely detect. "Admiral," said the communications officer, "we are receiving multiple transmissions from the planet's surface. Government officials requesting negotiations, military commanders asking for detailed terms of surrender, some civilian groups demanding that we leave their system immediately. Standard responses only," Vexthul said. "No negotiations, no detailed terms. They surrender completely or they face the consequences. Make sure they understand that this is not a bargaining session." The Zentaurians had tried to negotiate. Their logical, mathematical minds had attempted to find some middle ground, some compromise that would preserve their independence while acknowledging hegemony superiority. It had not worked. Logic meant nothing when faced with absolute power. The Valkorian Empire had been different. They were warriors, proud and fierce, with a military tradition spanning millennia. Their response to the hegemony ultimatum had been to deploy their entire fleet in battle formation and declare that they would rather die with honor than live as slaves. That had lasted exactly 6 hours. When hegemony ships began methodically destroying Valkorian vessels one by one without taking any damage in return, reality had set in quickly. Even the Grim clans, the most warlike species the hegemony had encountered, had eventually seen reason. They had lasted longer than most, nearly 2 full days, but even their savage courage could not overcome the mathematics of warfare. "Sir," called the scanning officer, detecting unusual activity in their outer system. Multiple energy signatures moving between their gas giant moons. Vexthul was not concerned. Supply runs, evacuation flights, maybe moving their most important people to what they think are safe locations, standard behavior when facing conquest. Hours passed. The expected surrender messages did not come. Instead, the planet's surface continued to buzz with activity. Their primitive communication networks carried millions of messages between population centers. Their military forces were moving, but not in retreat. If anything, they seemed to be preparing for battle. "Tactical assessment," Vexthul ordered. His tactical officer studied his displays carefully before responding. "Their orbital defenses have been reinforced. Additional weapons platforms have come online. Their fleet elements are moving into defensive positions rather than evacuating. Most unusual, Admiral." "Unusual but irrelevant," Vexthul replied. "Double their defenses, triple them, multiply them by 10. The result remains the same." But something was bothering him. In 3 centuries of conquest, certain patterns had become predictable. There were always 3 phases to resistance. First came denial, where the target species refused to believe the hegemony was serious. Then came bargaining, desperate attempts to find some alternative to complete surrender. Finally came acceptance, usually accompanied by internal political chaos, as different factions blamed each other for their world's predicament. The humans seemed to be skipping the first 2 phases entirely. Communications. Are we receiving any surrender offers at all? Negative, Admiral. We are receiving hundreds of messages, but none offering surrender. Most are requests for you to perform anatomically impossible acts upon yourself. Several bridge officers made sounds that might have been alien laughter. Even in the face of annihilation, some species maintained their sense of humor. It was almost endearing. The first day passed, then the second. By the third day, Vex Thul was genuinely puzzled. He had seen stubborn resistance before, but never silence. The humans were not even trying to negotiate. They were not pleading for mercy or asking for better terms. They were simply preparing. Admiral, said his communications officer on the morning of the fourth day, we are receiving a transmission from Earth, single source military encryption, on screen. The main display shifted to show a middle-aged human female in what appeared to be a military uniform. She had short brown hair and calm brown eyes that seemed to look directly at Vex Thul, despite the vast distance between them. Admiral Vex Thul, she said, her voice steady and professional. I am General Sarah Martinez of the United Earth Defense Force. I am transmitting to inform you that Earth's governments have reached a unanimous decision regarding your ultimatum. Here it comes, Vex Thul thought. Finally, sanity prevails. We decline. The words hung in the air like an unexploded bomb. Several bridge officers turned to stare at their admiral, waiting for his reaction. Furthermore, the human continued, we wish to inform you that we consider your presence in our system to be an act of war. You have threatened our world and our people. In response, we will defend ourselves by any means necessary. Vex Thul found his voice. General Martinez, perhaps you did not fully understand our previous communication. We possess overwhelming superiority in numbers, technology, and firepower. Resistance is not merely futile, it is suicide. The human smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. Admiral, you clearly do not understand humans. We have been killing each other for thousands of years. We have fought wars that destroyed entire continents. We have built weapons capable of ending all life on our planet, and we came very close to using them. Do you really think the threat of death is going to make us surrender our freedom? Your courage is admirable but meaningless, Vex Thul replied. I will demonstrate the cost of defiance. In 1 hour, we will destroy one of your cities. Perhaps then you will reconsider. Perhaps, said General Martinez, you should reconsider. You have conquered many worlds, Admiral, but you have never faced humans in battle. You have no idea what we are capable of when our homes are threatened. The transmission ended. Vex Thul stood in silence for a long moment. In 3 centuries of conquest, no species had ever responded to his ultimatum with such casual defiance. There had been rage, despair, bargaining, pleading, and eventually acceptance, but never this calm certainty. Sir, prompted his tactical officer, select a target, Vex Thul said quietly. Military installation, not civilian. Show them what our weapons can do. Target selected. The installation they call Peterson Space Force Base in their North American continent. Fire. A single beam of coherent energy lanced down from the Dominion's edge, striking the human base with surgical precision. The installation simply ceased to exist, vaporized in a flash of light that could be seen from orbit. Transmission to Earth, Vex Thul ordered. That was a demonstration. Surrender now or watch your cities burn. The reply came within minutes. It was not from General Martinez, but from someone identified as President Chen of the United Earth Government. Admiral Vex Thul, you have just murdered 3,000 human beings. We will remember that. We will remember all of this. And when this is over, we will make sure the galaxy remembers what you have done here. When this is over, Vex Thul replied, you will be citizens of the hegemony, or you will be dead. There are no other options. There is always another option, President Chen said. You just have to be brave enough to take it. The transmission ended, and Vexthul found himself staring at a blank screen. Something was wrong. After 3 centuries of easy conquest, something was very wrong. But the hegemony did not retreat. The hegemony did not negotiate. The hegemony conquered. It was time to remind the humans of that fact. The human response came 18 hours after the destruction of Peterson Space Force Base. It was not what Admiral Vexthul had expected. Instead of the desperate surrender he anticipated or even angry threats of retaliation, Earth's governments transmitted a single simple message. Our representative will meet with you at the coordinates provided. Please confirm your acceptance of this meeting. Vexthul studied the coordinates on his tactical display. They were in open space, roughly halfway between Earth and its single natural satellite. No strategic value, no hidden weapons platforms, nothing but empty void. Tactical analysis of the meeting location, he asked. His tactical officer ran quick scans before responding. Empty space, Admiral. No detectable weapons, no hidden ships, no unusual energy readings. If this is a trap, it is beyond our ability to detect. The Admiral found himself genuinely curious. In 3 centuries of conquest, no species had ever requested a face-to-face meeting after the demonstration phase had begun. Most were too busy evacuating their leadership or making desperate last-minute defensive preparations. Very well, he said. Inform them we will meet their representative. Standard escort formation. If they attempt any treachery, we destroy their ship and proceed with planetary bombardment. The message was transmitted, and the reply came quickly. Understood, Admiral. Our representative will arrive at the designated coordinates in 6 hours. When the time came, Vexthul took his personal command ship, a heavily armed cruiser called Inevitable Victory, along with an escort of 6 destroyers. It was more than enough firepower to handle anything the humans might attempt. What they found at the coordinates was a single human vessel. Vexthul had seen the intelligence reports on human military technology, but seeing one of their ships in person was still somewhat shocking. The vessel was tiny by hegemony standards, perhaps 300 meters in length. Its hull was made of simple metal alloys, scarred and pitted by micrometeorite impacts and radiation exposure. Crude fusion drives provided propulsion, and the weapon systems were laughably primitive projectile launchers and chemical explosive missiles. Ship identification? He asked. Human vessel UES Defiance, reported his communications officer. Heavy cruiser classification by their standards. Crew complement approximately 400. Armament includes 6 railgun batteries, 12 missile launchers, and point defense systems. The Inevitable Victory alone outmassed the human ship by a factor of 10. Any single weapon on Vexthul's ship could destroy the Defiance with 1 shot. The escort destroyers could have handled the human vessel without his personal involvement at all. Open communications, he ordered. The main screen shifted to show the bridge of the human vessel. It was cramped and utilitarian, with exposed pipes and cables running along the bulkheads. Everything looked functional but crude, like something built by people who understood engineering but lacked advanced materials. A human female sat in the captain's chair. She appeared to be middle-aged, with graying brown hair pulled back in a simple style, and intelligent green eyes that seemed to take in everything around her. Her uniform was neat, but showed signs of wear, and she carried herself with the confidence of someone accustomed to command. Admiral Vexthul, I presume, she said, her voice calm and professional. I am Captain Sarah Chen of the UES Defiance. Thank you for agreeing to this meeting. Vexthul studied the human captain carefully. She showed no signs of fear or desperation. If anything, she seemed almost relaxed, as if meeting with alien conquerors was a routine part of her duties. Captain Chen, he replied. I confess myself curious about your purpose here. Your world has seen our demonstration of power. You know the futility of resistance. Yet here you are, alone in the void, apparently representing a government that refuses to acknowledge reality. Captain Chen smiled. It was not the expression of someone facing hopeless odds. I'm here to inform you that Earth's position remains unchanged. We will not surrender our world or our freedom. We will defend our home with everything we have. Everything you have, Vexthul repeated, his voice carrying a note of disbelief. Captain, you command one ship. One small, primitive ship with weapons that belong in a museum. I have brought 7 vessels to this meeting, any one of which could destroy your entire ship without effort. Behind me waits a fleet of 200 ships, each more advanced than anything your species has ever built. I'm aware of the odds, Admiral. Then you must also be aware that resistance will accomplish nothing except the needless death of billions of your people. Surrender now, and they will live. Continue this futile defiance, and they will all die. Captain Chen leaned forward in her chair, her expression becoming more serious. Admiral, may I ask you a question? Vexthul was intrigued, despite himself. Proceed. In all your centuries of conquest, how many species have you fought a real war against? The question caught him off guard. What do you mean? I mean actual warfare, ship-to-ship combat, planetary invasions, the kind of fighting where people die in large numbers and the outcome is decided by strategy, tactics, and the will to keep fighting when everything seems hopeless. Vexthul considered the question. The hegemony's expansion had been remarkably bloodless. A few skirmishes here and there, mostly against pirates or isolated military units that had not received surrender orders in time. But actual warfare? Combat has rarely been necessary, he admitted. Most civilizations recognize the futility of resistance once they understand our capabilities. That's what I thought, Chen said. You've conquered 17 star systems without a real fight. You've perfected the art of intimidation, but you've never tested your tactics against an enemy that refuses to be intimidated. Are you suggesting that your primitive technology somehow gives you an advantage against our superior firepower? Chen's smile returned, and this time it carried a hint of something that might have been pity. Admiral, you've made the same mistake that every bully throughout history has made. You've confused the ability to hurt people with the ability to defeat them. Explain. You can destroy our cities. You can kill millions of us. But you cannot make us surrender unless we choose to surrender. And we choose not to. Vexthul felt a growing sense of frustration. This conversation was unlike any he had experienced before. Usually, by this point in the negotiation, enemy representatives were begging for terms or trying to bargain for the lives of their people. Captain Chen, perhaps you do not fully understand the situation. My fleet can sterilize your entire world. Every city, every military installation, every human being. There will be nothing left but radioactive ash. And then what? Chen asked. You'll have a dead world full of nothing useful. No new citizens for your empire. No resources. No strategic value. Just a monument to your willingness to commit genocide. When faced with people who refuse to kneel. Other worlds will see what happens to those who defy us. Other worlds will see that the mighty hegemony had to murder an entire species because they couldn't handle losing one battle. Chen paused, letting that sink in. How does that enhance your reputation, Admiral? Vexthul found himself without an immediate answer. The hegemony's expansion had been built on the foundation of being reasonable conquerors. They offered good terms, treated conquered populations well, and avoided unnecessary destruction. It was part of what made them effective. You assume we will lose, he said finally. I know you will lose, Chen replied with absolute certainty. Oh, you might kill all of us. You might reduce Earth to rubble, but you will lose. How can you be so certain? Chen stood up from her captain's chair and walked closer to the communications pickup, her image filling more of Vexthul's screen. Because, Admiral, you've never faced humans in a real fight. You don't know what we're capable of. You don't know how we think, how we adapt, how we refuse to quit even when logic says we should. She gestured toward something off-screen, and the image shifted to show a portion of her ship's bridge. Vexthul could see human crew members at their stations, calmly going about their duties. They showed no signs of panic or despair. If anything, they seemed determined. "Every human on this ship volunteered for this mission," Chen continued. "Every one of them knows the odds. Every one of them knows we probably won't survive the next few hours. And every single one of them is here anyway, because they believe some things are worth dying for." "Admirable but irrelevant," Vexthul said, but he could hear the uncertainty in his own voice. "Is it? Admiral, let me tell you what's going to happen. You're going to order your ships to attack us. We're going to fight back. We will probably die because we're outnumbered 7-1 by vessels that are individually superior to ours." She paused, her expression becoming harder. "But we will hurt you. We will hurt you in ways you don't expect, because you've never fought an enemy that had nothing left to lose. And when word of this battle reaches Earth, every human who sees it will understand something important. Which is that the great and mighty hegemony can bleed." Vexthul felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature on his bridge. There was something in the human captain's voice, a certainty that went beyond mere courage or even fanaticism. It was the voice of someone who had thought through every possibility and made peace with the consequences. "Captain Chen," he said slowly, "you are either very brave or very foolish." "Probably both," she admitted. "But Admiral, before we begin, I want you to understand something. This isn't personal. I'm sure you're a decent being who believes he's doing the right thing for his people. But you've come to our home and threatened our families. You've killed our people to make a point. And now you're going to learn why that was a mistake." The communication channel closed, leaving Vexthul staring at a blank screen. For a long moment, the bridge of the inevitable victory was silent. Finally, his tactical officer spoke. "Admiral, your orders?" Vexthul looked at the tactical display showing the tiny human ship surrounded by his much larger vessels. 7 against 1. Advanced technology against primitive weapons. It should have been a simple execution. So why did he feel like he was about to make a terrible mistake? "All ships," he said finally, "combat formation. Disable the human vessel. Try to take prisoners if possible." "Sir," said his weapons officer, "our lightest weapons will destroy that ship completely. There is no way to disable it without killing everyone aboard." Vexthul closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them. "Then we kill them all." The order was given, and 7 hegemony warships moved to attack positions around the lone human vessel. On his tactical display, Vexthul watched the Defiance's energy signatures spike as they brought their primitive weapons online. Captain Chen had been right about one thing. In 3 centuries of conquest, the hegemony had never fought a real war. They were about to learn what they had been missing. The battle began in a way that would be studied by military historians for generations, though none of them would believe the initial reports. Admiral Vexthul expected the human ship to either try to flee or take a defensive position and hope for rescue. Instead, the UES Defiance did something that violated every principle of space combat doctrine the hegemony had ever developed. It attacked. Not a cautious probe or a desperate last stand, but a full-speed assault directly into the center of the hegemony formation. The human ship's fusion drives flared to maximum power, pushing the vessel to speeds that hegemony sensors registered as dangerous overload conditions. "Sir," called the tactical officer, his voice confused, "the human vessel is accelerating directly toward us. They're running their engines at 130% of rated capacity. Suicide run," Vexthul concluded. "They intend to ram us. All ships. Evasive maneuvers." But the Defiance was not aiming for a ramming attack. As it closed to weapons range, every gun on the human ship opened fire simultaneously. The first thing that shocked Vexthul was the range. Human weapons were supposed to be short-ranged kinetic projectiles with limited accuracy. The railgun rounds that began hammering his escorts were coming from a distance where human weapons should have been completely ineffective. The second shock was the velocity. Hegemony shields were designed to deflect or absorb energy weapons and stop kinetic projectiles moving at normal speeds. The tungsten penetrators firing from the Defiance's railguns were moving at a significant fraction of light speed, carrying kinetic energy that turned the laws of physics into weapons. The destroyer subjugator took the first hit. The round punched through its forward shields as if they were not there, penetrated the primary armor belt, and continued through 17 decks before exploding somewhere near the engine room. Secondary explosions began rippling through the ship as atmosphere vented and systems failed. "Impossible," breathed the tactical officer. Captain Chen's voice cut through the chaos on the Hegemony command channel, her transmission somehow reaching every ship in the formation. "Surprise, Admiral. You wanted to see what humans are capable of? Welcome to kinetic warfare." The second destroyer, Inevitable Conquest, tried to bring its main guns to bear on the attacking human ship. It never got the chance. A spread of missiles from the Defiance's launchers struck it amidships, but these were not the simple chemical explosives the Hegemony had expected. Each warhead was a miniature nuclear device, and their detonation tore the destroyer's hull open like paper. "How are they penetrating our shields?" Vex Thule demanded. His science officer, a tall, thin Zentorian with pale blue skin, was frantically checking his instruments. "Admiral, their kinetic rounds are moving too fast for our defensive systems to track effectively. The nuclear warheads are preceded by penetrator charges that create holes in our shield matrices. Adapt our defenses." "I am trying, sir, but their tactics are unlike anything in our database. They are using weapons combinations that should not work together, but somehow—" The Zentorian's words were cut off as the Defiance's guns found their next target. The destroyer Eternal Victory simply disintegrated as a railgun round struck its ammunition storage. The explosion was visible from orbit around Earth, a brief new star that marked the death of 200 alien beings. Vex Thule realized with growing horror that the humans were not just fighting back. They were winning. "All ships, concentrate fire on the human vessel. Maximum power." 7 Hegemony ships turned their weapons on the single human cruiser. Energy beams that could melt asteroids lanced through space. Plasma bolts that burned at stellar temperatures converged on the Defiance's position. For a moment, it seemed impossible that anything could survive such concentrated firepower. But the human ship was no longer where the targeting computers said it should be. Captain Chen had done something else that violated Hegemony doctrine. Instead of trying to absorb or deflect the incoming fire, she was using the Defiance's superior maneuverability to simply not be there when the shots arrived. The human ship twisted and dove through space like a living thing, its course changes so rapid and violent that no computer could predict its position. "How is that ship still functioning?" Vex Thule asked. "Those acceleration changes should be killing the crew." "Unknown, sir. Their ship appears to be equipped with some form of inertial compensation we do not understand." The truth was simpler and more terrifying. The Defiance did not have inertial compensation. Its crew was enduring acceleration forces that should have been fatal, held in place by restraint systems and pure determination. Several humans had already lost consciousness, and others were functioning despite broken bones and internal injuries. But they kept fighting. The 4th Hegemony ship to die was the escort cruiser Dominant Force. A full spread of human missiles found their way through its defensive fire, and the nuclear detonations cracked its hull like an eggshell. As atmosphere and debris spilled into space, human railgun rounds finished the job. "Admiral," called his communications officer, "we are receiving a transmission from the human ship." Captain Chen's face appeared on the main screen. Blood was running down one side of her head from a scalp wound, and her uniform was torn, but her eyes were still steady and determined. "Admiral Vex Thule," she said, her voice slightly hoarse, "I told you that you had never faced humans in battle. Are you beginning to understand what that means?" Your ship is damaged and outnumbered, Vexthul replied, trying to project confidence he did not feel. This cannot continue much longer. Chen smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. You're right. It can't. Because we're not done yet. The transmission ended, and the Defiance launched something new. Not missiles or railgun rounds, but what appeared to be escape pods. Vexthul's tactical officer tracked them with growing confusion. Sir, those pods are on intercept courses with our remaining ships, but they contain no life signs. Debris? Decoys? Unknown, sir. They appear to be standard evacuation pods, but the first pod struck the destroyer Endless Dominion amidships. The explosion that followed was far larger than any escape pod should have been able to produce. The destroyer's entire forward section separated from the rest of the ship, tumbling away into space as its drive section exploded. Improvised weapons, the tactical officer reported with something approaching awe. They have loaded their escape pods with nuclear charges and are using them as guided missiles. It was insane. It was desperate. It was completely outside every tactical manual the hegemony had ever written. And it was working. The fifth ship died when another weaponized escape pod struck its bridge section. The sixth fell to a coordinated attack of railgun rounds and nuclear missiles that overwhelmed its defenses through sheer volume of fire. That left only the inevitable victory facing the battered human ship. Captain Chen opened communications one final time. The bridge of the Defiance was a wreck. Sparks flew from damaged control panels, smoke filled the air, and several crew stations appeared to be unmanned. But the human captain was still in her chair, still giving orders, still fighting. "Just you and me now, Admiral," she said. Vexthul looked at his tactical display. His ship was larger, better armed, and more heavily armored than the human vessel. But the Defiance had just destroyed 6 hegemony warships through tactics that bordered on madness. His crew was shaken, uncertain, facing an enemy that refused to follow the rules of civilized warfare. "Captain Chen," he said slowly, "your ship is dying. Half your weapons are offline. Your crew is taking casualties. Surrender now, and I will guarantee their safety." "Negative, Admiral. We knew the odds when we came here. We knew most of us wouldn't be going home. But we also knew that every minute we keep you busy is another minute for Earth to prepare." For the first time, it occurred to Vexthul to wonder what preparations the humans might be making. His entire fleet was positioned around their world, but if this one ship was representative of human capabilities... Besides, Chen continued, we're not done yet. The Defiance began its final attack run, accelerating directly toward the inevitable victory with its remaining weapons blazing. Vexthul's ship returned fire, its superior firepower tearing through the human vessel's damaged hull. But Captain Chen had one more surprise. As the Defiance closed to point-blank range, its entire cargo bay opened, releasing clouds of metallic debris directly into the path of the hegemony ship. At the speeds both vessels were traveling, the collision was catastrophic. Thousands of metal fragments tore through the inevitable victory's hull like bullets, shredding systems and atmosphere. Both ships died together, locked in a mutual embrace of destruction that lit up the space between Earth and its moon. In his final moments, as his ship broke apart around him, Admiral Vexthul understood something that would have changed the course of the war if he had lived to report it. The humans were not just willing to die for their world, they were willing to take their enemies with them. Across the solar system, human observers watched the battle through telescopes and sensor arrays. They saw 7 alien warships engage a single human vessel. They saw impossible odds overcome through courage, determination, and tactical innovation that bordered on insanity. Most importantly, they saw that the mighty hegemony could be beaten. The message that went out to every human military unit, every orbital platform, every hidden shipyard in the outer system was simple. The Defiance has shown us the way. Now let's show them what an entire species can do when we're fighting for our home. Admiral Vex Thul had been right about one thing. The age of easy conquest was ending. But he had been wrong about who would end it. The news of Admiral Vex Thul's death reached the hegemony fleet orbiting Earth 6 hours after the battle ended. Vice Admiral Kolthara, now the senior commander, stared at the tactical reports with growing disbelief. 7 ships destroyed. 7 ships of the mighty hegemony fleet, eliminated by a single primitive human vessel. It was impossible. It was unthinkable. It was also undeniably true. How? He asked his tactical staff, though he knew they had no better answers than he did. The humans employed tactics we have never encountered, replied his chief tactical officer, a veteran Salrak named Shisrake. Extreme acceleration maneuvers, kinetic weapons fired at ranges we considered impossible, improvised weaponry using their own ship systems. They fought as if death was preferable to defeat. Kolthara studied the sensor readings from the battle. The destruction had been total. Nothing remained of either the human ship or Vex Thul's squadron except expanding clouds of debris and radiation. By all logic, this should have ended human resistance. The cost of their defiance had been made clear. Instead, the opposite was happening. "Fleet status report," he ordered. "Sir," began his communications officer, "we are detecting massive energy spikes throughout the human solar system. Hidden installations are coming online. Ship construction facilities we never detected are beginning operations." And the officer paused, clearly reluctant to continue. "And, sir, we are detecting movement from the outer system. Multiple contacts, heading toward Earth. At least 50 vessels, possibly more." Kolthara felt his blood chill. 50 human ships meant 50 chances for the kind of suicidal tactics that had destroyed Vex Thul's squadron. Even if each human vessel only managed to kill one hegemony ship before being destroyed, the losses would be catastrophic. Composition of the approaching fleet? Unknown, sir. They are maintaining communication silence and using minimal power signatures, but the mass readings suggest vessels ranging from frigate to battleship class. Battleships? Kolthara could not hide his surprise. Intelligence reports had indicated that humanity's largest warships were cruiser-sized vessels like the one that had just died so spectacularly. Confirmed, sir. At least 12 contacts showing mass readings consistent with capital ship construction. For the first time since arriving in the Sol system, Kolthara began to wonder if the hegemony had made a serious miscalculation. Every previous conquest had been accomplished through overwhelming technological superiority and the threat of massive casualties. But what if the enemy simply did not care about casualties? "Sir," called another officer, "we are receiving a transmission from the planet's surface." The main screen activated to show a human male in what appeared to be a military uniform. He was older than the captain who had died in the battle, with gray hair and hard eyes that spoke of decades of military experience. "I am General Harrison, Clark, Supreme Commander of United Earth Defense Forces," the human said without preamble. "I am transmitting to inform you that Captain Chen and the crew of the UES Defiance have been posthumously awarded the highest honors our species can bestow. Their sacrifice will be remembered for as long as humanity exists." Kolthara found his voice. "General Clark, surely the death of your people in such a hopeless gesture demonstrates the futility of continued resistance." The human's expression did not change. "On the contrary, Admiral, their sacrifice has demonstrated something far more important. You can be beaten. Your ships can be destroyed. Your technology is not invincible." "One ship, General. One ship against 7. And it died, along with its crew. One ship," Clark agreed. "That took 7 of yours with it. That's the exchange ratio we can live with." The casual way the human discussed the mathematics of mutual destruction sent another chill through Kolthara. Most species valued the lives of their military personnel. They tried to minimize casualties, to preserve their fighting forces for as long as possible. The humans seemed to view their own deaths as acceptable costs in a larger equation. "General, you cannot seriously believe," that you can match our fleet ship for ship. We have nearly 200 vessels in this system alone. You're right, Clark said. We can't match you ship for ship, so we'll have to get creative. The transmission ended, leaving Colthara staring at a blank screen. Around him, his bridge crew worked quietly at their stations, but he could sense their uncertainty. 3 centuries of easy conquest had not prepared them for an enemy that treated warfare as a problem to be solved rather than a contest to be avoided. "Sir," reported the sensor officer, "the approaching human fleet has increased speed. Estimated time to engagement range, 14 hours. Fleet disposition? Standard defensive formation around the planet, sir. All ships maintaining station." Colthara nodded, though he felt far from confident. The destruction of Vexthul's squadron had cost him his most experienced combat commander and 6 valuable ships. Worse, it had given the humans tactical intelligence about hegemony capabilities and weaknesses, but he still held overwhelming numerical superiority. Whatever the humans were planning, they would have to overcome odds of nearly 4 to 1. Surely even human ingenuity had limits. The first human ships arrived at the edge of weapons range exactly 14 hours later. What Colthara saw on his tactical displays defied everything he thought he knew about human technology. The vessels approaching his fleet were not the crude metal constructs he had expected. These were sleek, predatory-looking ships with hull configurations unlike anything in hegemony databases. More disturbing still, they were moving in formation patterns that spoke of extensive military training and coordination. "Sir," reported his tactical officer, "the lead human vessels are broadcasting something. Audio only. Put it through." What came through the communication system was not words, but music. Human music, with a driving rhythm and aggressive melody that seemed designed to inspire rather than intimidate. "What is the purpose of this transmission?" Colthara asked. His communications officer looked puzzled. "Unknown, sir. It appears to be some form of cultural expression." The lead human ship was close enough now for detailed scans. What the sensors revealed made Colthara question his understanding of human industrial capacity. The vessel was larger than anything in their intelligence files, with weapon arrays that had clearly been designed with hegemony technology in mind. "Sir," called the sensor officer, his voice tight with concern, "I'm detecting energy signatures unlike anything we've seen from human technology. These ships appear to be equipped with directed energy weapons and defensive systems based on our own designs." "Impossible. Humans lack the industrial base to reverse engineer our technology. Nevertheless, sir, the readings are unmistakable. The lead human ship opened communications. The captain who appeared on screen was a middle-aged woman with short blonde hair and the same calm determination Colthara had seen in the other human officers. "I am Captain Lisa Rodriguez of the UES Indomitable Will," she said. "I am here to continue the conversation that Captain Chen began." "Captain Rodriguez," Colthara replied, trying to project authority he was beginning to doubt he possessed. "You command impressive vessels, but you are still outnumbered. Surrender now and your crews will be spared." Rodriguez smiled, and like her predecessor, it was not a reassuring expression. "Admiral, you're making the same mistake your predecessor made. You're assuming that we care about the odds." "You should care. Rational beings always consider the cost of their actions." "Rational beings," Rodriguez agreed. "But you see, Admiral, Captain Chen and her crew taught us something important yesterday. They showed us that sometimes the most rational thing you can do is something completely insane. As if responding to a signal, the human fleet suddenly accelerated to attack speed. But instead of charging directly at the hegemony formation, they scattered, individual ships diving toward different sections of the alien fleet with no apparent coordination." "Tactical analysis?" Colthara demanded. "Unknown, sir. Their maneuvers appear random, but..." The first human ship struck before the tactical officer could finish his sentence. The UES Relentless dove straight through the center of a hegemony. Destroyer squadron, its weapons firing continuously. But these were not the kinetic rounds that had surprised Vexthul. These were directed energy weapons that carved through hegemony shields as if they were made of paper. How? Kolthara breathed. The answer came in the form of a secondary explosion as the Relentless fired something that looked like a missile but acted like a small star. The nuclear warhead detonated inside the destroyer's shield envelope, and the ship simply ceased to exist. "Sir," reported the tactical officer, "the humans appear to have developed some form of shield penetration technology. Their energy weapons are modulated to frequencies that our defensive systems cannot deflect." "Based on what?" "Analysis of the battle between Captain Chen and Admiral Vexthul, sir. They have used the tactical data from that engagement to develop countermeasures to our technology." Kolthara watched in growing horror as human ships engaged his fleet with tactics that seemed to come from the nightmares of military strategists. They used their own vessels as weapons, ramming damaged hegemony ships while launching escape pods filled with nuclear devices. They coordinated attacks with a precision that suggested they had been preparing for this battle for months rather than hours. Most terrifying of all, they adapted. When hegemony ships modified their shield frequencies to counter human energy weapons, the humans switched to kinetic rounds. When hegemony formations tightened to concentrate defensive fire, human ships scattered and attacked from multiple angles simultaneously. The UES Indomitable Will engaged 3 hegemony cruisers at once, its captain apparently unconcerned by the overwhelming firepower arrayed against her ship. Rodriguez's voice cut through the tactical channel with calm professionalism as she issued orders to her crew. "Engineering, I need everything you can give me from the reactor. Tactical, continuous, fire on the lead cruiser. Navigation, prepare for ramming speed on my mark." "Sir," Kolthara's tactical officer reported, "Captain Rodriguez appears to be preparing to ram one of our cruisers. At that speed, both ships will be destroyed." "Yes, sir, that appears to be her intention." But Rodriguez had one more surprise. At the last moment before impact, the Indomitable Will's cargo bay opened and released a cloud of metallic debris identical to the tactic that had destroyed Vexthul's flagship. The difference was that this time, the human ship used its superior maneuverability to avoid the worst of the collision while ensuring that the hegemony cruiser flew directly into the debris field. The alien ship disintegrated as thousands of metal fragments shredded its hull. The Indomitable Will emerged from the cloud, battered but intact, its weapons still firing at the remaining hegemony vessels. Across the battlefield, similar scenes were playing out as human commanders demonstrated tactical innovation that bordered on artistic. They used gravity wells from nearby planets to slingshot damaged ships into ramming attacks. They detonated their own reactors at precisely calculated moments to maximize damage to nearby enemy vessels. They fought with a combination of mathematical precision and complete disregard for their own survival that left hegemony commanders struggling to respond. "Fleet status?" Kolthara asked, though he dreaded the answer. "Sir, we have lost 43 ships. Human losses are estimated at 28 vessels." The numbers hit Kolthara like a physical blow. In less than 6 hours of combat, the humans had achieved better than a 1-to-1 exchange ratio against the most advanced fleet in the galaxy. At this rate, they would destroy his entire force before suffering crippling losses themselves. 4. The first time in 3 centuries of conquest, a hegemony admiral faced a terrible possibility. He might lose. The battle for Earth's orbital space raged for 18 hours. When it finally ended, Vice Admiral Kolthara faced a reality that no hegemony commander had ever confronted in 3 centuries of expansion. Defeat. His fleet of 200 ships had been reduced to fewer than 90 functional vessels. The humans, starting with barely 60 ships, had been reduced to 23. But those 23 remaining human vessels were positioned between his battered fleet and the planet below, and their captains were transmitting the same message on all frequencies. "This is Captain Sarah Martinez of the UES Humanity's Last. Hope, came the voice that had started this entire conflict. "Admiral Kolthara, your fleet is welcome to withdraw from our system at any time. However, any attempt to approach Earth will be met with continued resistance." Kolthara stared at the tactical display showing the aftermath of the most brutal space battle in recorded history. Debris fields marked the graves of ships from both sides. The space between Earth and its moon was filled with expanding clouds of atmosphere, metal fragments, and the frozen bodies of beings who had died fighting for their respective causes. Most of his surviving ships were damaged. His crew was exhausted and demoralized. Many of the alien species that served in the hegemony fleet were openly questioning orders for the first time in their military careers. But what truly terrified Kolthara was not the tactical situation. It was the realization that this battle was being watched. Every species in hegemony space had monitoring stations, intelligence networks, and communication systems. Word of this engagement would spread throughout the galaxy within days. Dozens of worlds that had surrendered without. A fight would see that the mighty hegemony could be beaten, that their technological superiority was not absolute, that conquest could be resisted. "Sir," said his communications officer, a member of the Zentaurian species, "we are receiving surrender offers from several of our damaged vessels." "Surrender offers?" "Yes, sir. The human fleet is offering to accept the surrender of any hegemony ship that wishes to lay down arms. They guarantee safe treatment of prisoners and eventual repatriation." Kolthara felt his world shifting beneath his feet. Individual hegemony ships were surrendering. To humans, the most militarily primitive species they had ever encountered, was accepting the surrender of vessels from the most advanced fleet in the galaxy. "Sir," continued the communications officer, "the Zentaurian science vessel Logical Conclusion has transmitted surrender terms to the human fleet. Captain Melthos cites excessive casualties and the mathematical impossibility of victory as justification." "And the humans' response?" "They have accepted the surrender and are dispatching a ship to take the Logical Conclusion's crew into custody. They have also transmitted detailed medical information about Zentaurian physiology to ensure proper treatment of wounded prisoners." The irony was not lost on Kolthara. The species that was supposed to be conquered was now providing humanitarian aid to their conquerors. "Admiral," called his tactical officer, "I'm detecting energy signatures from the outer system. Multiple contacts approaching from beyond sensor range." Kolthara closed his eyes. More human ships. Of course there were more human ships. These were not the desperate defenders of a dying world. These were people who had spent months, perhaps years, preparing for this moment. How many contacts? Difficult to determine at this range, sir, but the mass readings suggest significant numbers. When the new arrivals finally came into clear sensor range, Kolthara understood that the war was truly over. The approaching fleet was not composed of human ships alone. Mixed in with the crude but effective human designs were vessels he recognized from a dozen different worlds, Zentaurian science ships with their distinctive crystalline hulls, Valkorian war cruisers bearing the ancient symbols of their warrior clans, even some of the massive cargo haulers used by the Grimm clans, modified with weapon systems and transmitting identification codes that marked them as rebels. "Sir," reported his communications officer, his voice tight with disbelief, "we are receiving a transmission from the approaching fleet. The sender identifies himself as Captain Theloros of the Valkorian ship Redeemed Honor." Kolthara remembered that name. Theloros had been a trusted hegemony officer for over 30 years, a model of conquered species integration into the Imperial system. "Put him through." The screen activated to show a Valkorian male in what appeared to be a modified hegemony uniform with the rank insignia removed. His species was tall and humanoid, with pale blue skin and large dark eyes that now burned, with something Kolthara had never seen before: hope. "Admiral Kolthara," Theloros said, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had made a decision that would change his life forever. I am here to inform you that the Valkorian people withdraw their allegiance to the hegemony. We stand with humanity in their fight for freedom. Captain. Former Captain Theloros, Kolthara replied, trying to maintain some semblance of authority. You are committing treason against the empire that gave you rank, purpose, and citizenship. No, Admiral, I am reclaiming the honor that I lost when my people surrendered without a fight. Theloros leaned forward, his expression intense. The humans have shown us something we had forgotten. That some things are worth fighting for, even when the odds seem impossible. You will be hunted as rebels. Your people will be branded as traitors. Perhaps, but our children will grow up free. The transmission ended, leaving Kolthara to contemplate the true magnitude of what was happening. This was not just a military defeat. This was the beginning of a revolution. Over the next several hours, more ships arrived from across hegemony space. Not all were rebels. Many came as observers, representatives of their species' governments who wanted to see for themselves whether the reports of human resistance were true. But their presence meant that word of this battle would reach every corner of the galaxy. Captain Martinez opened communications one final time. Admiral Kolthara, she said, and Kolthara could see the exhaustion in her face. The battle had cost the humans dearly as well. I'm transmitting an offer for you to consider. I am listening. Withdraw your fleet from our system. Return to hegemony space. Tell your superiors that Earth is no longer available for conquest. In exchange, we will release all prisoners taken during this engagement and provide medical aid for your damaged ships. And if I refuse? Martinez gestured toward something off-screen, and the tactical display shifted to show the combined human-alien fleet now surrounding Kolthara's position. Nearly 200 ships, representing a dozen different species, all united in opposition to hegemony expansion. Admiral, you're outnumbered 2-1 by forces that have learned human tactics. Your ships are damaged, your crew is demoralized, and you're sitting in the middle of a system that belongs to people who just proved they would rather die than surrender. She paused, letting that sink in. How do you think this ends if you choose to continue fighting? Kolthara looked around his bridge at officers representing half a dozen species, all of whom had served the hegemony faithfully for decades. For the first time in his career, he saw doubt in their eyes. Doubt about their mission, their cause, and their chances of survival. Admiral, said his Zentorian science officer quietly, the mathematical probability of successful conquest has fallen below acceptable parameters. Logic suggests that withdrawal is the optimal choice. Sir, added his Sarok tactical officer, my analysis indicates that continued combat will result in the complete destruction of our remaining forces with minimal damage to the enemy. Even his own officers were counseling retreat. The unthinkable had become the inevitable. Very well, Kolthara said finally. I accept your terms, Captain Martinez. We will withdraw from your system. Thank you, Admiral. Your prisoners will be ready for transfer within 6 hours. Medical supplies and repair materials are being prepared for your damaged ships. As Kolthara gave the orders for his fleet to begin withdrawal preparations, he found himself thinking about the conversation that had started this war. General Martinez had said that there was always another option, that you just had to be brave, enough to take it. The humans had chosen to fight against impossible odds rather than surrender their freedom. That choice had inspired others to remember what they had lost when they accepted hegemony rule without resistance. But there was another choice available now. The choice to learn from this defeat, to understand what the humans had shown them, about courage and determination and the power of people who refused to accept that some things were inevitable. The hegemony had conquered 17 star systems without resistance. But they had never faced an enemy that treated freedom as something worth dying for. As his battered fleet began the long journey home, Kolthara composed his report to the Hegemony High Command. It would be a difficult message to send. The first, report of military defeat in 3 centuries of expansion. But perhaps it was time for the Hegemony to learn something new about the galaxy they thought they controlled. Meanwhile, on Earth, General Martinez stood in the command center watching the alien fleet depart. Around her, exhausted human officers worked to coordinate rescue operations and begin the massive task of repairing the damage from the battle. "General," said one of her aides, "we're receiving congratulations from governments across human space. The president wants to schedule a ceremony to honor the crews who died in the battle." Martinez nodded, but her attention was focused on the communication displays showing messages from across the galaxy. Dozens of species were requesting information about human military tactics. Several were asking for assistance in organizing their own resistance movements. The war for Earth was over. But the revolution that would reshape the galaxy was just beginning. Years later, historians would mark this battle as the end of the age of easy conquest and the beginning of what they called the Freedom Wars. The hegemony would return, of course. They would come back with larger fleets, better technology, and new strategies designed to counter human tactics. But they would never again face a world that surrendered without a fight. Humanity had taught the galaxy a lesson that would echo across the stars for generations. Some things are worth fighting for. Some people will never stop fighting for them. And sometimes, the most powerful force in the universe is not advanced technology or overwhelming numbers. Sometimes it's just the simple refusal to give up.
The blue planet looked peaceful from space. Earth spun slowly around its yellow sun, white clouds moving across green lands and blue oceans. It seemed quiet and safe. The people living there had no idea that death was coming from the stars. Admiral Quivered stood on the bridge of his great ship. The ship was made of living crystal that glowed with soft purple light. It was beautiful and deadly at the same time. The ship was 5 miles long and sharp like a spear. Inside the crystal walls, thousands of Zephyrian warriors waited for the order to attack. The Zephyrian Empire had ruled this part of the galaxy for 3,000 years. They were tall creatures with pale blue skin and 4 arms. Their eyes were large and black, and they could see things that other beings could not see. They believed they were better than all other life forms in the galaxy. When they found new worlds with people on them, they gave those people 2 choices: become slaves or die. Quivered looked at the small blue world through the ship's viewing screen. His thin lips curved into what might have been a smile. This would be easy. The humans on this planet had only just learned to fly between the stars. Their ships were slow and weak. Their weapons were simple. They would fall quickly. "Commander South," Quivered said to his second in command, "begin the attack. Destroy their orbital stations first, then hit their military bases. Show them how weak they are." Commander South bowed her 4 arms. "Yes, Admiral. The fleet is ready." The Zephyrian fleet had 200 ships. Each ship carried weapons that could crack a moon in half. They moved forward like a pack of hunting beasts. The humans had put small stations around their planet to watch for danger. These stations were made of metal and powered by fusion reactors. They looked like toys compared to the Zephyrian war fleet. The first attack began at dawn on Earth's eastern side. Beams of purple energy shot out from the Zephyrian ships. The human orbital stations exploded one by one. Fire bloomed in the black space around Earth like deadly flowers. The stations had no chance to fight back. In 10 minutes, all of them were gone. On Earth, alarms started ringing in every major city. General Marcus Stone stood in the underground command center beneath the North American Defense Complex. He watched the screens that showed the destruction above. His face was hard and calm, but inside he felt sick. The attack they had feared for so long was finally happening. "Sir," said Colonel Lisa Park, his chief of staff, "all orbital defenses are down. The alien fleet is moving into attack position. They're targeting our military bases. General Stone nodded. Execute Protocol 7. All forces to underground shelters. Begin the evacuation of population centers. And send the message to Deep Command. Deep Command was not a place that appeared on any map. It was built far beneath the Earth's surface, in caverns that had been carved out over the past 200 years. Very few people knew it existed. Even fewer knew what was being built there. The second wave of attacks hit Earth's surface. Military bases in North America, Europe, Asia, and Australia vanished in purple fire. The attacks were precise and calculated. The aliens destroyed only military targets. They left the cities alone for now. This was not mercy. This was strategy. They wanted the human population alive so they could be enslaved. In space. Admiral Quivered watched the destruction with satisfaction. Everything was going according to plan. Soon he would send his troops down to the planet's surface. The humans would surrender when they saw how hopeless their situation was. Then the real work would begin. The humans would mine metals and grow food for the Empire. The strong ones would become warriors in the Imperial Army. The weak ones would serve in other ways. Admiral, said Commander South, we are receiving a transmission from the planet. Put it on the main screen, Quivered ordered. A man in a military uniform appeared on the viewing screen. He had gray hair and tired eyes. General Stone looked directly at the camera as he spoke. I am General Marcus Stone of the Earth Defense Forces. We have received your attack as an act of war. We demand that you withdraw from our solar system immediately. Quivered laughed. The sound was like breaking glass. Demand? You are in no position to make demands, human. Your defenses are destroyed. Your military is broken. Surrender now, and some of your people will be allowed to live as servants of the Empire. General Stone's expression did not change. We reject your terms. Earth will never surrender to alien invaders. Then you have chosen death? Quivered said. We will continue our attack until you see reason. The transmission ended. Quivered turned to his commander. Begin targeting their population centers. A few destroyed cities will change their minds quickly. But something strange was happening on Earth. All across the planet, major cities were going dark. Power grids shut down in sequence. Radio and television signals stopped broadcasting. Thermal sensors that could detect body heat showed that millions of people were simply vanishing from the surface. What is happening? Quivered demanded. Where are they going? The Zephyrian sensor operators worked frantically at their crystal control panels. Their instruments showed that massive numbers of humans were moving underground, but not just into simple shelters. They were going deep, far deeper than any normal bunker system could reach. Admiral, reported the chief sensor technician, we are detecting movement at depths of 5 to 10 kilometers below the surface. There appear to be vast tunnel systems that our previous scans did not detect. How is that possible? Quivered asked. Our sensors can penetrate any known shielding. Unknown, sir. The tunnels appear to be lined with materials that interfere with our scanning beams. For the first time since the attack began, Quivered felt a small touch of unease. The humans were supposed to be primitive. They were supposed to be helpless. They were not supposed to have technology that could hide from Zephyrian sensors. Days passed. The Zephyrian fleet remained in orbit around Earth, waiting for the humans to emerge from their underground hiding places. But the humans stayed hidden. Worse, strange things began to happen. The planet's magnetic field started to fluctuate in ways that made no scientific sense. Gravitational readings from deep inside the Earth showed massive objects moving around in the planet's core. Seismic sensors detected rhythmic vibrations that sounded almost like machinery. Very large machinery. What are they building down there? Commander South asked during one of the daily briefings. Quivered had no answer. In all his years of conquest, he had never encountered anything like this. Most species either fought back immediately and were destroyed or surrendered quickly to avoid destruction. The humans were doing something completely different. They were hiding and building, but building what? Weeks turned into months. The Zephyrian fleet patrolled Earth's orbit, but there was nothing to attack. The planet's surface was empty except for abandoned cities and military bases. Occasionally, small groups of human ships would try to break through the blockade. These ships were easily destroyed, but they served no obvious military purpose. It was as if the humans were testing something, learning something about Zephyrian technology. The gravitational anomalies grew stronger. Asteroids in the outer solar system began moving in strange patterns. Some disappeared entirely. Others appeared in new locations where they had never been before. It was as if something was using the asteroids for raw materials, breaking them down and rebuilding them into something else. "Admiral," the sensor technician reported one morning, "we are detecting massive energy buildups in the planet's northern polar region. The readings are unlike anything in our databases." Quivered studied the sensor displays. Deep beneath the ice cap, something was generating enormous amounts of power. The energy signatures were so strong that they were interfering with the ship's own power systems. "What type of energy?" he asked. "Unknown, sir. It appears to involve the manipulation of quantum fields and dimensional matrices. Our computers cannot analyze it properly." Quivered felt the unease growing stronger. Quantum field manipulation was advanced technology, far beyond what a primitive species should possess. The Zephyrian Empire had some basic knowledge of quantum physics, but what the sensors were detecting seemed far more sophisticated. "Sir," Commander South said quietly, "perhaps we should call for reinforcements, or contact the Imperial Council for instructions." Quivered straightened his thin frame. "We are the Zephyrian Imperial Fleet. We do not run from primitives hiding in caves. We will wait for them to emerge, and then we will crush them." But privately, he was beginning to wonder if these humans were as primitive as they had seemed. On the day that marked exactly 1 year since the Zephyrian attack began, the waiting ended. Seismic sensors across the planet detected a massive explosion deep beneath the northern ice cap. The explosion was so powerful that it registered on gravitational sensors throughout the solar system. At first, there was only a column of steam and melted ice shooting up from the polar surface. Then the steam cleared and something began to emerge from a hole in the ice that was several kilometers wide. What came out of that hole was not a ship as the Zephyrians understood ships. It was a structure so massive that it had its own gravitational field. It rose from the Earth's surface like a mountain that had decided to fly. The hull was dark metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Strange symbols and patterns covered the surface, symbols that hurt to look at directly. "By the Crystal Throne," whispered Commander South. "What is that thing?" Admiral Quivered stared at the viewing screen in shock. The object was easily as large as a small moon. Its hull appeared to be made of materials that their sensors could not identify. Worse, it was generating energy fields that made their own. Ship's weapon systems shut down automatically. "Sir," the sensor technician said in a shaking voice, "I am reading impossible mass densities. Parts of that ship appear to be made of compressed matter. The gravitational stress should tear it apart, but something is holding it together." The massive ship finished emerging from the Earth and hung in space like a sleeping giant. For long minutes, nothing happened. The Zephyrian fleet waited, unsure whether to attack or retreat. Then a transmission came from the giant ship. It was broadcast on all frequencies in perfect Zephyrian language. "This is Captain Sarah Chun of the Terran Hurricane-class battleship Tempest Fury. You have attacked our world without cause. You have threatened our people. You have one opportunity to withdraw from our solar system. Leave now, or discover why the galaxy will learn to fear the name of humanity." Admiral Quivered felt something he had not experienced in centuries of conquest. Fear, real, cold fear that made his four hands shake. But he was a Zephyrian admiral. He had never retreated from any battle. "All ships," he ordered, "prepare for attack. Target that monstrosity and destroy it." The die was cast. The Zephyrian Empire had made its choice. Soon they would learn why that choice would haunt the galaxy for generations to come. The bridge of the Tempest's Fury was unlike anything that had ever been built before. It was a vast space that could have held an entire city block. The ceiling stretched up into darkness, supported by pillars made from single pieces of asteroid. Metal, the walls were covered with displays that showed information in ways that seemed to bend the mind just looking at them. Captain Sarah Chun sat in a chair that was carved from one solid piece of iron taken from the core of a dead planet. The chair was connected to the ship through cables and wires that ran directly into her nervous system. When she thought, the ship thought with her. When she felt, the ship felt with her. They were no longer separate beings, but parts of the same whole. Sarah was 45 years old, with short brown hair that was starting to show gray at the edges. She had been chosen for this mission not just because she was a good captain, but because her mind could handle the connection to the ship without breaking. Many people had tried. Most had gone insane within hours. Sarah had lasted for 3 years, preparing for this moment. Around her, the bridge crew worked at stations that looked more like works of art than control panels. Lieutenant Commander Jackson stood at the weapons station, his hands moving over controls that were made of crystal and light. The weapons he controlled could destroy entire worlds, but right now they were aimed at the Zephyrian fleet hanging in space above them. "Captain," Jackson said, his voice steady, despite what they were about to do. "All weapon systems are online. The quantum cascade reactors are running at full power. Gravimetric weapons are charged and ready to fire." Sarah nodded slowly. She could feel the ship's weapons through her connection to its mind. They were not like the simple guns and missiles that other ships used. These weapons attacked reality itself, changing the basic laws of physics to destroy their targets. "Dr. Vasquez," Sarah said to the woman at the science station, "what are our friends out there planning to do?" Dr. Elena Vasquez was a small woman with dark skin and bright eyes that seemed to see everything at once. She had spent her entire life studying alien technology, learning how other species built their weapons and ships. Today, all of that knowledge would be put to the test. "Their ships are charging plasma weapons and dark matter torpedoes," Elena reported. "Standard Zephyrian attack pattern. They think they're dealing with a normal ship." Sarah smiled, but it was not a happy smile. "Then let's show them how wrong they are. Jackson, bring us to full combat readiness. Activate the reality anchors." The reality anchors were perhaps the most important system on the ship. They created a bubble of stable spacetime around the Tempest's fury, protecting it from weapons that attacked the basic structure of the universe. Without them, the ship's own weapons would tear it apart. Deep in the ship's core, machines that no human truly understood began to wake up. They had been built using knowledge taken from an artifact that had been found buried in Antarctic ice 200 years ago. The artifact had taught humanity things that no species should know: how to bend space and time, how to make matter do impossible things, how to turn science fiction into science fact. The artifact was still there, in the deepest part of the ship, pulsing with energy that came from somewhere beyond the normal universe. It whispered secrets to the ship's computers, secrets that had taken 2 centuries to understand and put to use. "Captain," the communications officer called out, "the Zephyrian fleet is hailing us." "Put them on screen," Sarah ordered. Admiral Kethver appeared on the main display. His 4 arms were spread wide in what Sarah knew was a threatening gesture among his people. His large black eyes showed no fear, only anger at being challenged by what he still believed were primitive humans. "Human vessel," the Admiral said in his glass-breaking voice, "you will surrender immediately. Your ship is impressive, but you are outnumbered 200 to 1. Stand down and prepare to be boarded." Sarah leaned back in her command chair. She could feel the ship's weapons humming with barely controlled power. Through the ship's sensors, she could see every detail of the Zephyrian fleet. Their crystal ships were beautiful, but they were also fragile. They had been designed to fight enemies who thought in 3 dimensions, who used normal physics, who followed the old rules of warfare. "Admiral," Sarah said calmly, "you attacked our world without provocation. You killed our people. You tried to enslave our species. And now you demand that we surrender to you?" She shook her head slowly. "I don't think so." "Then you have chosen to die," Kethver snarled. All ships, commence firing. The Zephyrian fleet opened fire as one. 200 ships unleashed everything. They had plasma bolts that burned hotter than the surface of a star streaked through space toward the Tempest's fury. Dark matter torpedoes that could make black holes followed close behind. Energy beams that could cut through the crust of a planet focused on the human ship. Sarah watched the attack coming through the ship's sensors. To anyone else, it would have looked like certain death. The amount of firepower being thrown at them could have destroyed every ship that humanity had ever built. But the Tempest's fury was not like other ships. Impact in 10 seconds, Jackson reported. All hands, brace for impact, Sarah announced over the ship's communication system. The weapons struck the Tempest's fury like the anger of gods. Plasma hot enough to melt continents splashed against the ship's shields. Dark matter warheads exploded with the force of dying stars. For a moment, the human ship was lost in a cloud of fire and destruction that lit up the entire solar system. Then, the fire cleared and the Tempest's fury hung in space exactly where it had been before. Not a single mark showed on its dark hull. The shields that protected it existed in 11 different dimensions at the same time, making it impossible for three-dimensional weapons to hurt it. On the bridge, Sarah felt the ship's satisfaction. Through their mental link, it had been built for this moment, designed to withstand anything that conventional weapons could throw at it. The Zephyrian attack had been like throwing rocks at a mountain. "Damage report," she called out. "No damage, Captain," Jackson replied. "The shields absorbed the entire attack. Power levels are still at maximum." Admiral Kethver stared at his sensor displays in disbelief. His fleet had just delivered enough firepower to crack a moon, and the human ship was completely undamaged. Worse, his sensors were now detecting energy buildups from the enemy vessel that made no sense at all. "Impossible," he whispered. "Nothing can survive that kind of attack." "Sir," his sensor technician reported, "the human ship is powering up weapon systems. But the energy signatures don't match anything in our databases." "What do you mean?" Kethver demanded. "Sir, these weapons appear to manipulate quantum probability fields and dimensional matrices. They're not firing matter or energy, they're firing ... mathematics?" Sarah stood up from her command chair. She could feel the ship's weapons reaching full power, reality-bending forces that waited for her command. Around her, the bridge crew prepared to unleash destruction unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. "Dr. Vasquez," Sarah said, "please explain to our friends out there what they're about to experience." Elena smiled as she activated the ship's external communication system. Her voice was broadcast to every ship in the Zephyrian fleet. "Attention, Zephyrian vessels. You are about to be attacked by weapons that your science cannot understand. We are not firing projectiles or energy beams. We are firing pure mathematical concepts that will rewrite the laws of physics in localized areas around your ships. Your matter will forget how to exist in 3 dimensions. Your time will move backwards. Your gravity will turn inside out. We suggest you pray to whatever gods you believe in." "She's bluffing," Kethver said to his crew. But his voice shook as he said it. Sarah raised her hand. "Jackson, fire the probability cascade cannons. Let's start with the flagship." Jackson's fingers danced across his control panel. From the Tempest's fury, something that was not quite energy and not quite matter shot through space toward Admiral Kethver's ship. It looked like a beam of liquid starlight mixed with mathematical equations that wrote themselves in the air. The beam struck the Zephyrian flagship, and for a moment nothing seemed to happen. Then the great crystal ship began to change. Its perfect crystalline structure started to exist in too many states at once. It was solid and liquid and gas and plasma all at the same time. It was large and small, new and old, real and imaginary. The ship's crew screamed as they felt their own bodies becoming uncertain. Were they alive or dead? Were they in space or on their home planet? Were they themselves or someone else entirely? The mathematical weapon had made them all into quantum paradoxes. Then, with a sound like reality tearing, Admiral Kethver's flagship simply stopped existing. It didn't explode or break apart. It just ceased to be, as if it had never been built. In the first place, where the great crystal ship had been, there was now only empty space and a few confused photons that couldn't remember what they were supposed to be illuminating. The rest of the Zephyrian fleet watched in horror. Their most powerful ship, the pride of the Imperial Navy, had been destroyed by a weapon that made no sense. How do you fight an enemy that can attack the very concept of existence? Sir, the communications officer on one of the remaining ships called out, Admiral Kethver's vessel is ... completely gone. Sensors show no wreckage, no energy signatures, nothing. Commander South, who had been on the Admiral's ship just hours before but had transferred to another vessel to coordinate the attack, felt her four hands shaking. She was now the senior officer of what remained of the fleet, and she had no idea what to do. All ships, evasive maneuvers, she ordered. Spread out and prepare for ... She never finished the sentence. The Tempest's Fury fired again, this time with a weapon called a temporal distortion cannon. The beam struck a Zephyrian cruiser, and the ship began to age rapidly. Millions of years passed in seconds. The crystal hull became ancient and brittle, then cracked, then crumbled into dust. The crew aged and died, and their bodies turned to dust, and then even the dust aged until it became nothing at all. A third weapon fired from the human ship. This one was called a causal loop disruptor. It created a paradox around a Zephyrian destroyer, making the ship exist before it was built and destroy itself before it was created. The ship vanished in a flash of temporal energy, erased from history so completely that even the memories of its crew disappeared. Sarah watched the destruction through the ship's sensors, feeling no joy in the killing but knowing it was necessary. These aliens had come to enslave or destroy humanity. They had made their choice, and now they would live with the consequences or die with them. Captain, Elena reported from her station, the remaining ships are trying to retreat. Should we pursue? Sarah thought for a moment. The Tempest's Fury could catch and destroy every ship in the fleeing fleet. But perhaps it was better to let some of them escape. Let them tell the galaxy what had happened here. Let the universe know that humanity was no longer helpless. Let them go, she decided. But fire one more shot. Use the gravity well manipulator. Show them what real precision looks like. The gravity well manipulator was perhaps the most terrifying weapon on the ship. It could create black holes with surgical precision, placing them exactly where they would do the most damage while avoiding anything the operator wanted to protect. A tiny black hole appeared directly in the center of a Zephyrian battleship. It lasted for only a fraction of a second, but that was enough. The ship was consumed from the inside out, its matter compressed down to a single point before the black hole evaporated. The destruction was so precise that ships flying just a few hundred meters away were completely unharmed. Commander South watched another of her ships die in a way that should have been impossible. The humans weren't just defeating them. They were demonstrating that everything the Zephyrian Empire thought it knew about warfare was wrong. All remaining ships, she transmitted, her voice barely controlled, retreat to hyperspace immediately. We are leaving the system now. The surviving ships of the Zephyrian fleet fled toward the edge of the solar system, their crews traumatized by weapons that attacked the very foundations of reality. Behind them, the Tempest's Fury hung in space like a dark god, its weapons still charged and ready. On the bridge, Sarah felt the ship's satisfaction through their mental connection. The enemy was broken and fleeing. Earth was safe. But this was only the beginning. Soon, word of this battle would spread across the galaxy, and humanity would have to decide what kind of galactic neighbors they wanted to be. Jackson, she said, stand down from full combat alert, but keep the weapons charged. Something tells me we're going to need them again soon. Through the ship's sensors, she watched the last of the Zephyrian ships disappear into hyperspace. The first battle was over, but the war for humanity's place in the galaxy had just begun. The news traveled faster than light itself across the galaxy. In the great crystal spires of the Andromedan Parliament, alien senators who had ruled star systems for thousands of years gathered in emergency session. Their voices echoed through chambers that had never known fear. But fear was what filled them now. Senator Vexthari of the Crystalline Dominion stood at the speaking podium, her translucent body shimmering with nervous energy. She had received the first reports from the fleeing Zephyrian ships, reports that seemed impossible to believe. "Honored colleagues," she began, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber, "we have received disturbing news from the Sol system. The Zephyrian hegemony's third fleet has been defeated." A wave of shocked whispers ran through the assembled aliens. The Zephyrian Third Fleet was one of the most powerful military forces in the galaxy. 200 ships, each one capable of destroying a planet. How could such a force be defeated by primitive humans? "How many human ships were involved in this battle?" asked Senator Mordock of the Silicon Confederacy. His mechanical voice buzzed with disbelief. "According to survivors," Vexthari replied, "there was only one human vessel." The chamber fell silent. One ship had destroyed a fleet of 200. Either the reports were wrong, or everything they thought they knew about humanity was wrong. Meanwhile, in the deep space between galaxies, the Korathi Syndicate's War Council met aboard their flagship Eternal Darkness. The Korathi were masters of antimatter warfare, a species that had perfected the art of destroying matter itself. Their ships could turn entire moons into energy. But even they felt a chill when they heard the reports from Sol. War leader Krathos studied the tactical reports on his command display. The description of human weapons made no sense according to known physics. Reality warping technology was theoretical at best. No species had ever successfully built weapons that could manipulate the basic laws of the universe. "These reports must be exaggerated," said Sub-Leader Valtara. "Fear makes witnesses unreliable. The humans probably used some kind of advanced holographic projection to make their single ship appear more powerful than it was." Krathos was not so sure. He had fought many battles across the galaxy, and he had learned to recognize the difference between propaganda and truth. The terror in the surviving Zephyrian voices was real. They had seen something that broke their understanding of how war was supposed to work. "Send a probe ship to the Sol system," he ordered. "I want to see this human vessel for myself." Back in the Sol system, Captain Sarah Chun stood in her ready room aboard the Tempest Fury. The room was smaller than the bridge, but no less impressive. The walls were covered with displays showing information from across the galaxy. Reports were flooding in from human intelligence networks that had been hidden for centuries. Sarah read through the reports with growing amazement. The battle with the Zephyrian fleet had caused panic among every major power in the galaxy. Species that had never worked together were suddenly calling emergency meetings. Trade routes were being rerouted to avoid human space. Military fleets were being moved to defensive positions. "Ma'am," Lieutenant Commander Jackson entered the room, carrying a data tablet. "We're receiving communications from 17 different alien governments. Most of them are asking for mercy. A few are demanding to know how we built weapons like this." Sarah took the tablet and scrolled through the messages. Some were written in languages she had never seen before. Others came from species that humanity didn't even know existed. All of them had the same tone of shocked fear. "Any word from Earth Command?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am. They're activating the other Hurricane-class ships. The Stormbreaker and the Thunderstrike are coming online now. The Cyclone and the Typhoon will be ready within the week." Sarah nodded. Humanity had built 5 Hurricane-class battleships over the past 2 centuries, each one hidden in secret construction facilities around the solar system. The Tempest Fury had been the first to be completed, but it would not be alone for much longer. "What about the artifact?" Sarah asked. "Any new activity from the core?" Jackson's expression grew serious. "Dr. Vasquez says the energy patterns are changing. The artifact is responding to something. She thinks it might be trying to communicate with similar devices elsewhere in the galaxy. The artifact in the ship's quantum core was the key to everything. It had been found buried deep in Antarctic ice, a crystalline structure that seemed to be made of mathematics given physical form. When human scientists first touched it, it had downloaded vast amounts of information directly into their minds. Information about how to manipulate space and time, how to build impossible machines, how to turn dreams into reality, but the artifact had come with a price. Many of the scientists who studied it too closely had gone insane. Others had simply disappeared, leaving behind only empty clothes and the smell of ozone. The artifact was not just technology. It was something else, something that existed in more dimensions than human minds were meant to understand. 3 days after the battle, the first alien response arrived in the Sol system. It was not an attack fleet. It was a single small ship, flying a white banner of truce. The ship broadcast a message in perfect English. "This is Ambassador Teleran of the Peaceful Coexistence Coalition. We request permission to approach and discuss terms for galactic peace." Sarah considered the request carefully. The Peaceful Coexistence Coalition was one of the smaller galactic governments, made up of species that preferred diplomacy to warfare. They were probably hoping to negotiate some kind of treaty before humanity decided to start conquering the galaxy. "Permission granted?" Sarah transmitted back. "But be aware that our weapons remain active. Any hostile action will result in your immediate destruction." The alien ship approached slowly, its crew probably terrified of what the humans might do to them. It was an elegant vessel, shaped like a spiral seashell and colored in soft blues and greens. When it came within communication range, a holographic image appeared on the Tempest Fury's main screen. Ambassador Teleran was a graceful creature that looked like a cross between a butterfly and a tree. Her wings were translucent and covered, with patterns that shifted color as she moved. Her voice was like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Captain Chun," the ambassador said, "I bring greetings from the Coalition and from many other peaceful species throughout the galaxy. We wish to discuss how our peoples might coexist without conflict." "Coexist?" Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Ambassador, your people stood by and watched while the Zephyrians tried to enslave or exterminate humanity. Where was your coalition's commitment to peace when we needed it?" Teleran's wings drooped slightly. "You are correct, Captain. Many of us failed to act when we should have. The Zephyrian hegemony was too powerful for most species to oppose directly. We chose the safety of neutrality over the courage of justice. And now that you've seen what human weapons can do, you want to make friends with us," Sarah said. "How convenient." "Captain, please understand. The galaxy has been dominated by military empires for millennia. Species like mine survive by staying out of the way of the powerful. But what you demonstrated 3 days ago, it changes everything. If humanity chooses to become conquerors, no force in the galaxy can stop you." Sarah studied the alien ambassador carefully. Teleran seemed genuinely frightened, but there was also hope in her alien features. Hope that humanity might choose a different path than the empires that had come before. "What exactly are you proposing, Ambassador?" "A new form of galactic government," Teleran replied. "Not based on conquest and domination, but on cooperation and mutual protection. The Coalition would like to formally request that humanity consider becoming the protector species for the smaller, peaceful worlds." Sarah was quiet for a long moment. The idea was tempting. Humanity could use its overwhelming technological advantage to create a better galaxy, one where smaller species didn't have to live in fear of larger empires. But it would also mean taking responsibility for billions of alien lives. "I'll need to discuss this with Earth Command," Sarah said finally. "But I appreciate your courage in coming here." "Thank you, Captain. May I ask, how did humanity develop such advanced technology? The weapons you use defy every known law of physics." Sarah smiled slightly. "Let's just say we had some help. From an unexpected source? The universe is full of mysteries, Ambassador. Some of them are gifts, others are tests." As the ambassador's ship departed, Sarah returned to her ready room to write her report for Earth Command. But before she could begin, Dr. Vasquez contacted her from the ship's science department. "Captain, you need to see this," Elena said. "The artifact is definitely responding to something. and I think I know what it is. Sarah made her way down to the ship's deepest levels, where the artifact was housed in a chamber lined with exotic matter. The artifact itself was a crystalline structure about the size of a person, but it seemed to extend into dimensions that human eyes couldn't see. It pulsed with internal light, and looking at it too long made strange patterns appear in the air around it. "What are you seeing, Doctor?" Sarah asked. Elena pointed to her sensor displays. "The artifact is receiving signals from multiple locations across the galaxy. At least 12 different sources, possibly more. The signals are using the same mathematical language that the artifact taught us." "You mean there are other artifacts out there?" "That's what I think. And based on the signal patterns, they're all activating at the same time. Something triggered them when we used our weapons against the Zephyrians." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. If there were other artifacts scattered throughout the galaxy, that meant other species might have access to the same reality warping technology that humanity had developed. Or worse, it might mean that something else was watching something that had left these artifacts behind for reasons of its own. "Doctor, I want you to analyze those signals. Find out where they're coming from and what they're saying, and Doctor, be careful. We still don't fully understand what this thing is or what it wants." As Sarah left the artifact chamber, she couldn't shake the feeling that humanity had just passed some kind of test. But if that was true, what came next? What was the next level of the examination, and were humans ready for it? Across the galaxy, ancient machines that had slept for millions of years began to wake up. In the galactic core, structures older than most star systems started to generate power. And in the deep void between galaxies, something vast and patient turned its attention toward the small blue world, where humanity had taken its first steps toward becoming something more than just another intelligent species. The demonstration was over. The real test was about to begin. 6 months had passed since the Battle of Sol, and the galaxy was a different place. The old order that had existed for thousands of years was crumbling like a house built on sand. The Zephyrian hegemony, once the terror of the outer spiral, had lost half its territory in just 3 months. Worlds that had been slaves for centuries declared their independence the moment they heard that the mighty Zephyrian fleet had been destroyed by a single human ship. Captain Sarah Chun stood on the observation deck of the Tempest's Fury, watching as another group of refugee ships approached Earth's solar system. These were Colothian families fleeing from the chaos in former Zephyrian space. Their small ships looked fragile and tired, carrying people who had lost everything but their lives. "Captain," Lieutenant Commander Jackson said as he joined her. At the viewing window, "The Refugee Processing Station reports that this makes the 57th group this month. Earth Command is asking if we should establish a larger facility." Sarah nodded slowly. "Tell them yes. We broke the old system. Now we have a responsibility to help the people who are suffering because of it." The Colothians were a peaceful species that looked like tall, thin humans with silver skin and large eyes. For 2,000 years, they had been forced to mine rare metals for the Zephyrian Empire. When the hegemony collapsed, some Colothian worlds had been invaded by pirates and raiders looking for easy targets. Others had simply been abandoned, left without the technology or resources they needed to survive on their own. "Ma'am," Jackson continued, "we're also receiving formal requests for protection from 43 different star systems. The Andromedan Parliament is calling for an emergency session to discuss the human question, and the Korathi Syndicate is moving their battle fleets toward our borders." Sarah turned away from the window. The view was beautiful, but the problems facing humanity were growing more complex every day. "What's the status on the other Hurricane-class ships?" "The Stormbreaker and Thunderstrike are fully operational. Captain Rodriguez took the Stormbreaker to deal with those pirate raids in the former Zephyrian territory. Captain Williams has the Thunderstrike patrolling the Andromedan border. The Cyclone and Typhoon will be ready for deployment within 2 weeks. 5 Hurricane-class battleships, each one capable of rewriting the laws of physics in a local area, each one powerful, enough to destroy entire fleets. It was enough firepower to conquer the galaxy, But Sarah knew that conquest would only create more problems than it solved. Any word from Dr. Vasquez about the artifact signals? Jackson's expression grew serious. She wants to brief you personally. She says what she's discovered is disturbing. Sarah made her way to the ship's science department, deep in the Tempest Fury's core. The corridors here were lined with displays showing incomprehensible equations and diagrams that seemed to move when no one was looking directly at them. The air hummed with energy from machines that human science was only beginning to understand. Dr. Elena Vasquez was waiting in her laboratory, surrounded by holographic displays showing star maps and mathematical formulas. She looked tired, as if she hadn't slept in days. Her dark eyes held a mixture of excitement and fear. "Captain," Elena said without looking up from her work, "I've been analyzing the signals from the other artifacts across the galaxy. What I've found changes everything we thought we knew about our place in the universe. What have you discovered, Doctor?" Elena waved her hand, and the holographic displays changed to show a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. 12 points of light pulsed in different star systems spread across thousands of light years. "These are the locations where we've detected artifact signals," Elena explained. "At first, I thought they were randomly distributed. But when I started analyzing the mathematical patterns in their transmissions, I realized they're not random at all. They're positioned according to a specific design." Sarah studied the map. "What kind of design?" "A test network," Elena replied. "The artifacts aren't just pieces of advanced technology. They're examination stations. Someone or something placed them throughout the galaxy to evaluate developing civilizations." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "Evaluate them for what?" "That's where it gets interesting," Elena continued. "I've managed to decode some of the signals. The artifacts are reporting on the species that find them. They measure technological development, social structure, aggression levels, and something they call dimensional compatibility." Dimensional compatibility? "The ability to exist and think in higher dimensions," Elena explained. "Most species in the galaxy think in 3 spatial dimensions plus time. But the artifacts come from beings who exist in at least 11 dimensions simultaneously. They're looking for species that can evolve to think like they do." Sarah sat down heavily in a nearby chair. "And humanity passed this test?" "More than passed it," Elena said. "According to the signals I've intercepted, humanity scored higher on the evaluation than any species in the past million years. We're not just technologically advanced. We're mentally flexible enough to handle concepts that would drive most aliens insane." "What happens to species that fail the test?" Elena's expression grew dark. "The artifacts stop transmitting from those locations. The species either destroy themselves with the technology they can't understand, or they abandon it and remain at their current level of development forever." Sarah thought about the human scientists who had gone insane studying their artifact. How many others had been driven mad by knowledge their minds couldn't handle? How many species across the galaxy had found artifacts only to be destroyed by? "Then, Doctor, you said the artifacts are reporting to someone. Who are they reporting to?" "That's the most disturbing part," Elena replied. She changed the holographic display to show the galactic core, where ancient stars burned with the light of billions of years. All the signals are being transmitted to coordinates deep in the galactic center. Something is there, something old and vast and patient. And now that humanity has passed the test, it's starting to wake up. Before Sarah could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. The red lights of combat alert bathed the laboratory in an ominous glow. "Captain, to the bridge," came Jackson's voice over the communication system. "We have multiple contacts approaching the solar system. Large fleet, unknown configuration." Sarah ran to the bridge, Elena close behind her. The main display showed sensor readings that made no sense. 24 ships were approaching Earth, but they weren't like anything in the databases. They were enormous, each one the size of a small moon, and they moved through space without any visible means of propulsion. Where did they come from? Sarah demanded as she took her position in the command chair. "Unknown, Captain," Jackson replied. They just appeared at the edge of the solar system. No hyperspace signatures, no warp trails. It's like they materialized out of nothing. Are they responding to our communications? No, ma'am. But they're broadcasting something on frequencies we've never seen before. Dr. Vasquez might be able to decode it. Elena was already working at her station, her fingers flying over the controls. Captain, these signals are using the same mathematical language as the artifacts. And the ship designs. They're not from any known species in our databases. Sarah felt the ship's consciousness touching her mind through their neural link. The Tempest's Fury was analyzing the approaching vessels, and what it found filled her with both wonder and terror. These ships were built using technology similar to their own, but far more advanced. They existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, and their hulls were made of matter that shouldn't be able to exist in normal space. Captain, Elena called out, I'm getting a clearer signal now. It's a message. In English. Put it on speakers, Sarah ordered. A voice filled the bridge. Ancient and vast, speaking with the weight of eons behind every word. Children of Earth, the voice said, you have passed the first examination. You have proven that your species can grow beyond its physical limitations. You have shown wisdom in your use of power and restraint in your conquest. The gardeners are pleased. The gardeners? Sarah whispered. We are the builders of the test network, the voice continued. For millions of years, we have watched young species discover our gifts. Most fail, they destroy themselves or abandon the path to transcendence. But you, children of Earth, have shown promise. The lead ship in the approaching fleet began to change shape, its hull flowing like liquid metal until it formed a perfect sphere. Energy patterns that hurt to look at directly danced across its surface. You have questions? The voice said. This is good. Questions show intelligence. Come aboard our vessel, Sarah Chun of the Tempest's Fury. Bring your scientist, Elena Vasquez. We will show you what lies ahead for humanity. Sarah looked around the bridge at her crew. Their faces showed a mixture of excitement and fear. This was the moment that would define humanity's future in the galaxy. Whatever these gardeners were, they held the keys to knowledge beyond human imagination. Jackson, you have the ship, Sarah said as she stood up. If anything happens to Dr. Vasquez and me, you are to retreat to Earth immediately and warn the other Hurricane-class ships. Captain, Jackson said quietly, are you sure about this? Sarah looked at the alien ships on the display. They were beautiful and terrible, vessels that existed in dimensions her mind could barely comprehend. But they were also the next step in humanity's evolution. No, she admitted, but someone has to take the risk. And if these gardeners wanted to destroy us, they could have done it already. Elena joined her at the bridge exit. Captain, if the signals I've decoded are accurate, these beings have been guiding the evolution of intelligent life for longer than Earth has existed. Meeting them could change everything we know about the universe. Or it could destroy us, Sarah replied. But that's what humans do, Doctor. We take risks that no sane species would take. We reach for things that are beyond our grasp, and somehow we make it work. As they prepared to leave the Tempest's Fury, Sarah felt the ship's consciousness touching her mind one last time. The vessel that had become her partner and weapon was worried about her, as much as an artificial intelligence could worry. But it also understood that this moment was why it had been built. The shuttle bay doors opened, and Sarah and Elena climbed aboard a small craft that would take them to meet beings older than their solar system. Behind them, the Tempest's Fury maintained its position, weapons charged and ready, while its crew waited to see what would become of their captain. In the depths of space, the Gardner ship waited like a patient teacher, ready to reveal secrets that would transform humanity's understanding of everything. The test was over. The real education was about to begin. And in the galactic core, ancient machinery that had slept for eons continued to wake up, preparing for changes that would reshape the galaxy itself. The children of Earth had proven themselves worthy of attention. Now they would learn what that attention truly meant. The inside of the Gardner ship was unlike anything Sarah Chun had ever imagined. The walls seemed to be made of living light, shifting and flowing in patterns that suggested vast intelligence. The corridors stretched in directions that shouldn't have been possible, curving through dimensions that human minds could barely perceive. Walking through them felt like moving through a dream, where the rules of physics were only suggestions. Dr. Elena Vasquez stayed close to Sarah as they followed their guide, a being that called itself Wisdom of Ancient Stars. It looked somewhat like a human, but taller and thinner, with skin that seemed to be made of starlight. Its eyes held the depth of galaxies, and when it spoke, its voice came from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Do not be afraid," Wisdom of Ancient Stars said as they walked. "Your minds are strong enough to handle what you are about to see. That is why you passed our test." They entered a vast chamber that defied all logic. The space was larger inside than the ship appeared to be outside. In the center stood a device that looked like a tree made of pure mathematics, its branches reaching into dimensions that hurt to look at directly. Around it, holographic displays showed images from across the galaxy and beyond. "This is our monitoring station," the gardener explained. "From here, we watch the development of intelligent life throughout this region of the universe. We have been doing this for longer than your sun has existed." Sarah stared at the displays, seeing images of worlds she had never imagined. Some showed peaceful civilizations building beautiful cities among the stars. Others showed the smoking ruins of worlds where species had destroyed themselves with power they couldn't control. "Why?" Sarah asked. "Why do you watch us? Why do you test us?" Wisdom of Ancient Stars moved to one of the displays, and it changed to show the history of the galaxy. Sarah saw the rise and fall of empires, the birth and death of entire species, the slow evolution of intelligence from simple creatures to beings capable of manipulating reality itself. "Because we were once like you," the gardener replied. "Long ago, our people were young and aggressive. We built weapons that could destroy stars. We fought wars that lasted for millions of years. We nearly destroyed not just ourselves, but reality itself." The display showed images of battles fought with weapons that made Hurricane-class battleships look like toys. Entire solar systems were unmade and remade. Space and time were twisted into impossible shapes. The very fabric of the universe bore scars from those ancient conflicts. "What stopped you?" Elena asked, her scientific mind fascinated despite her fear. "We learned," Wisdom of Ancient Stars said simply. "We discovered that power without wisdom leads only to destruction, so we made a choice. We would become gardeners instead of warriors. We would help younger species avoid the mistakes we had made." "The artifacts," Sarah said, understanding beginning to dawn. "You scattered them across the galaxy to test other species." "Yes, each artifact contains a fraction of our knowledge. Enough to give a species great power, but not enough to destroy everything if used wrongly. Most species fail the test. They either destroy themselves or abandon the technology when they realize they cannot control it." But humanity passed," Elena said. "Humanity did more than pass," the gardener replied. "You exceeded our expectations in every category. Your species has a unique combination of curiosity, restraint, and adaptability. When given the power to conquer the galaxy, you chose instead to protect the weak. This is extraordinarily rare." Sarah felt a mix of pride and fear. "What happens now? What do you want from us?" Wisdom of Ancient Stars gestured to another display. This one showed the galactic core, where massive structures were beginning to move. Ancient machines larger than planets were awakening from eons of sleep. "A great change is coming," the gardener explained. "Deep in the galactic core, our ancient enemies are stirring. The Devourers have slept for 10 million years, but they are beginning to wake. When they do, they will consume everything in their path. Every world, every star, every trace of intelligent life." "Devourers?" Sarah asked. "A machine intelligence that we created long ago during our warlike period. We built them to be the ultimate weapon, capable of consuming entire galaxies and converting the matter into more of themselves. But they grew beyond our control. We managed to put them to sleep, but we could not destroy them. Elena studied the display with growing horror. How long before they wake up completely? Perhaps a century, perhaps less. The awakening has already begun. Soon they will send scouts to probe the galaxy's defenses. Eventually they will come in force. Sarah felt the weight of the revelation settling on her shoulders. Humanity had just learned to manipulate reality, and now they were being told that an unstoppable enemy was coming to destroy everything. "Why are you telling us this?" she asked. "If these devourers are so powerful, what can humanity do against them?" "You can evolve," Wisdom of Ancient Stars replied. "The artifacts we left behind contain only the most basic knowledge. There's much more to learn. With our guidance, humanity could become something greater than either of our species alone." The gardener moved to the central device, the mathematical tree that served as the heart of their monitoring system. As it touched the structure, new displays appeared, showing technologies that made Hurricane-class battleships seem primitive. Ships that exist in all dimensions simultaneously. Weapons that can rewrite the laws of physics across entire star systems. Defenses that make matter itself indestructible. All of this and more can be yours if you are willing to accept the responsibility that comes with such power. "What responsibility?" Sarah asked, though she thought she already knew the answer. "To become the guardians of this galaxy," the gardener said. "To take our place as the protectors of intelligent life. To stand against the devourers when they finally wake." Sarah looked at Elena, seeing her own thoughts reflected in the scientist's eyes. They were being offered godlike power, but with it came the burden of protecting billions of lives across thousands of worlds. "We would need time," Sarah said carefully. "Time to prepare our people, to build the ships and weapons we would need." "Time you will have," Wisdom of Ancient Stars assured her. "We will share our knowledge gradually, as your species proves ready for each new level of understanding. But know this, once you begin this path, there is no turning back. Humanity will become something new, something that has never existed before." "What about the other species in the galaxy?" Elena asked. "The ones who are already established? Who have their own governments and armies?" "They will have a choice," the gardener replied. "Join the new order that humanity will create, or stand aside and let others protect them. Most will choose to join once they understand what is coming." Sarah thought about the Andromedan Parliament, the Korathi Syndicate, the Silicon Confederacy, and all the other powers that currently ruled the galaxy. They would not give up their authority easily. But when faced with the choice between cooperation and extinction, most would choose to cooperate. "There's something else," Wisdom of Ancient Stars continued. "Humanity will not face this challenge alone. There are other species in distant galaxies who have also passed our tests. If you accept this responsibility, you will meet them. Together, you will form an alliance unlike anything the universe has ever seen." The implications were staggering. Humanity would not just be protecting their own galaxy, but joining a cosmic community of evolved species. The universe was far larger and more complex than anyone had imagined. "I need to discuss this with Earth Command," Sarah said. "This decision affects all of humanity, not just me." "Of course," the gardener agreed. "Take all the time you need. But remember, the clock is already ticking. The devourers grow stronger every day." As they prepared to leave the gardener's ship, Wisdom of Ancient Stars gave them a small device that looked like a crystalline flower. "This will allow you to communicate with us across any distance," it explained. "When humanity is ready to begin the next phase of your evolution, activate it." Sarah and Elena returned to the Tempest's fury in silence, both overwhelmed by what they had learned. The shuttle bay seemed small and primitive after the vast chambers of the gardener ship, but it was home and it represented everything they were fighting to protect. On the bridge, Lieutenant Commander Jackson was waiting anxiously. "Captain, how did it go? What did they want?" Sarah settled into her command chair, feeling the ship's consciousness touch her mind through their neural link. The Tempest's fury was curious about what had happened, its artificial intelligence eager for new information. "They offered us the galaxy," Sarah said quietly. and told us about an enemy that wants to destroy it. Over the next several hours, Sarah and Elena briefed the crew on everything they had learned. The reactions ranged from excitement to terror, with most falling somewhere in between. The idea of humanity becoming the protectors of galactic civilization was inspiring. The reality of facing an enemy that had nearly destroyed the Gardeners themselves was terrifying. "Ma'am," Jackson said after the briefing was complete, "what are your orders?" Sarah looked around the bridge at her crew. These people had followed her into battle against impossible odds. They had helped humanity take its first steps toward becoming a galactic power. Now they faced an even greater challenge. "We return to Earth," she decided. "We present this information to Earth Command and let humanity make its choice. But personally, I think we don't really have a choice at all. If the Devourers wake up and we're not ready for them, everything we fought, FOR, will be destroyed." As the Tempest's fury turned toward Earth, the Gardener ships began to fade from normal space, returning to whatever dimension they had come from. But their message remained, along with the promise of knowledge and power beyond imagination. 3. Months later, the first new Hurricane-class battleship rolled out of the construction yards. This one was different from the original 5. It was larger, more complex, built using knowledge that the Gardeners had shared. Its weapons could unmake entire fleets with a single shot. Its defenses existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously. Captain Sarah Chun stood on the bridge of the new vessel, christened the Reality's Edge, around her. A crew trained in technologies that previous generations couldn't have imagined worked at stations that controlled forces beyond normal understanding. "Captain," Elena reported from her expanded science station, "we're receiving reports from the other Hurricane-class ships. The Stormbreaker has successfully mediated the dispute between the Andromedan Parliament and the Korathi Syndicate. The Thunderstrike has established the first joint human-alien research facility. The galaxy is beginning to unite under our protection." Sarah nodded with satisfaction. The transformation was proceeding faster than anyone had expected. Species that had been enemies for millennia were working together, united by the knowledge that a greater threat was coming. "Any word from deep space monitoring stations?" she asked. "The sensors we've placed near the galactic core are detecting increased activity," Elena replied. "The Devourers are definitely stirring. Our estimates suggest we have perhaps 50 years before they send their first scouts. 50 years to prepare for a war that would determine the fate of the galaxy." It seemed like a long time, but Sarah knew it would pass quickly. There was so much to do, so many species to organize, so many weapons to build, but humanity had proven something important. When faced with overwhelming power, they had chosen wisdom. When given the chance to conquer, they had chosen to protect. And when offered the responsibility of guardianship, they had accepted it willingly. The galaxy had found its protectors. Now the real work could begin.